Hey, Kilted Warrior here. Hope you're having a great day. Remember to subscribe if you enjoy the video, and if you want to see more videos covering Baldurs Gate, Elder Scrolls and Starfield, be sure to check out the channel. Otherwise, let us begin. The Fey Knight. The Fey are whimsical, chaotic, and as likely to hinder as help you. The great courts of the mightiest of the Fey offer blessings to those who might serve their interests in Faerun. The Fey Knight is a half-orc who was abandoned as a child in the wilds, only to be taken in by Fey creatures who would become his adopted parents. He would be taught to respect the Fey, nature, and to honour the oath of ancients. A paladin seeking to fight darkness and protect nature, both in the Feywild and Faerun. In time he would get the attention of the Seelie court and would be granted power so that he might better fight those who threaten nature, the light, and those who pay homage to the summer court. And so the half-orc agreed to a pact with an archfey of the court. With Ithalids appearing in numbers never before seen on the Sword Coast, it is the duty of the Fey Knight to defend the land and prevent this evil from spreading further, as the rise of a new Ithalid empire was a threat to the Feywild and Faerun, and so the Fey Knight was called to play his part in the eternal battle of light and darkness. The build. At its core, the Fey Knight is a Lockadin build, mixing the heavy-hitting power and flexible healing of an Oath of Ancients paladin, with the equally flexible warlock spellcasting options and packs to make a knight that can bulldoze enemies close and at range, but also take crazy amounts of damage by becoming Wolverine. I recommend starting as a paladin to get the better starting equipment, but ultimately it won't matter once you get going. The paladin will give you all the proficiencies you might need. For your ability scores, or attributes as I call them because I'm stuck in my ways, obviously you will go high charisma, as both your core classes will need it. It will also make you a great party face. Also, you want to go strength for your weapons, though technically you could go dexterity, but I prefer strength here, as well as a bit of constitution. I also made my intelligence and wisdom default rather than dropping them as one might do, as it helps with proficiency rolls for various things. For overall levels when starting, I suggest take 2 and 2 up to level 4 with each class. This will give you your invocation options, your smites, channels, plus some spell options of both the warlock and the paladin to use. As you continue to level up, the great thing is your warlock, upon reaching spell level 2, can actually use its slots, which replenish on a short rest, for smites, as well as other spells, meaning you can juggle your spell slots as required and save your normal slots for when you need them, as they don't replenish on a short rest. Also, your warlock slots scale with your warlock level, so the higher your warlock's casting level, the better, as you'll always be able to upcast and then use short rests to replenish them no matter what. Obviously, long rests aren't really a problem in the game unless you set the difficulty, such as with me, where I made it so that long rests require 3 times the amount of resources. So keep in mind that the short rest replenishment won't matter if you're using normal settings. Level 6. So by level 6, which is around when most people finish Act 1, you'll have 2 levels in Paladin, just to get the basics, your smite and your healing hands, as well as your oath related abilities. For this build I took Oath of Ancients, as it fits the theme nicely and boosts your healing a little bit with Healing Radiance, but any of the oaths will do if you want to do something else. But don't take Oathbreaker, as that's very against this character concept. For spells, just grab a few smites for different uses, get Cure Wounds, Bless, and remember to pick a fighting style that suits you. I simply took Defense because it's a safe bet. You then have 4 levels in Warlock Archfey, of course. It will give you your Fey Presence, which allows you to do an AoE to cause Frighten, and if you faced Fey Knights in Act 3 before, you know how annoying it is to face abilities like this. It will prevent your enemy from moving, it grants disadvantage on their attacks and saving throws. Nevertheless, by level 4, the Warlock spells I suggest will of course be Hex, as that's a core part of this build, as I will note later. But you also will want to take Hellish Rebuke because it's a great reaction to have, but also take Misty Step. This allows you to be really mobile. Also for the Pact boon, for role-playing purposes, I took Chain so that I could get a familiar. Anyway, the good ones to take for role-playing purposes I felt were the Frog and Raven. They felt pretty good for the Fey Knight. But obviously you can use whatever you want, and you can take whatever Pact boon you want. There's no problem with doing Pact of the Blade if you want to do that. Likewise, for Invocation, I took Beast Speech and Beguiling Influence as they fit nicely with the Fey idea and allow me to take more proficiencies, as usually I would take Persuasion and Deception at the start of the game anyway. This way I didn't have to. But if you're going for a power playthrough, you obviously go Agonizing and Repelling Blast for your Eldritch Blast, as it is stupidly strong. For level 4 feat, I went with Lucky, because it synergizes with Portent die, and the fact that I had Divination Gale in my party meant that with this, you can gain advantage on rolls, therefore making sure that you strike that all-important hit or avoid being shoved into the abyss. So by Act 2, you already have a lot going for you with the Fey Knight. You can debuff, heal, do great melee damage with your smites. You're also very tanky, and you can do some effective spell ability combos on your own. Again, Hex into Smite, which I'll discuss later more. Also having Fey Presence allows you to be very tanky and get really stuck in, so enemies around you will struggle to hit, and it makes them more likely to fail any checks against you. That said, Hex will nullify the disadvantage importance, at least for one of your attributes, but again, Fey Presence allows you to apply it around you, not just at one target, so remember that once you get your multiple attacks. You can always pick Charm as well, it just means they can't attack you, but I think for tanking, it's obviously better to have them still attack you and miss, rather than having them target Gale, for example. Aside from that, at this point, I also want to note that you have a ton of reactions. So you have your Hellish Rebuke, so if someone hits you, you can hit back and hit pretty hard, though it will cost a Warlock spell slot to do it. But also for being attacked or doing any rolls that you need to do, you have your Lucky die as well as being able to upgrade your crits to a Smite for super high damage. I prefer not to always use Smite for normal attacks, I prefer to keep it for the crits. All in all, you're going to end up with a ton of reactions by the end of this leveling process. Level 10. Once you have reached level 10, this is when your build really comes together. You can finally balance your Paladin levels against your Warlock ones, as up to level 6 you were 4 in Warlock and 2 in Paladin, so you'll push Paladin up to level 5. At level 4 you'll gain a feat. I went with Performer to round out my charisma and also improve my deception and performance checks. Again, those fit nicely with the roleplay. But depending on your ability scores, you may want to go for increasing charisma by 2 points if your charisma was rounded out before. For spells, take what you want, there's not much here to talk about, but remember that Misty Step from Warlock should be replaced at your next Warlock level, as Paladin of Oath of Ancients does get access to it. Also, you'll be gaining your level 2 spell slots for the Paladin and an extra level 1 one that fits nicely with the 2 level 3 Warlock slots you'll have. As for the order, I suggest taking Warlock level 5 when you're at combined 7, and then you take your 3 Paladin levels so that your Paladin is at level 5 when you reach level 10. So for level 5 of your Warlock, which will be level 7 overall, it is an important level up, as you'll get your improvement to your Pact. So if you went with the chain, your familiar will get an extra attack usually, so like the Raven will be able to blind 2 enemies, which is what I had before I did a respec. But then if you go with Pact of the Blade, which I do suggest, you get an extra attack. And note, this attack does work with the Paladin's extra attack. That's why I originally didn't use it, I wasn't sure if that worked, but it does. They do stack. Regardless, following that you have another invocation. I went with Agonizing Blast, again I respect, and removed Beast Speech, as the Paladin level 3 makes that obsolete. Again, I only took it because I like to have that in Act 1. Yet for spells, you can now go with Hunger of Hadar and Plant Growth, which is a classic combo in this game. For me, I was also running Will permanently in this playthrough, so I didn't need to use Replace Spell for Hadar. I got Will to get that spell. But do note that you can do this combo on your own if you have Haste active, or a Potion of Speed. Note for Plant Growth, it is not a concentration spell, so it can be comboed and is great for crowd control when used with Hadar. There are several moments in Act 2 where there's a lot of enemies, and using this combo slows them drastically. Basically, they can only move a few meters even on a dash. It does continuous damage, it darkens the area, and blinds people within it. Again, the Hunger of Hadar is one of the best AoE spells in the game, and is another great reason to pick Warlock. Also, if you take a Druid in your team, which I started doing in Act 2, you'll get Spike Growth, which is an easy spell to get, and with that, just watch those damage numbers flow. Every time an enemy moves, they'll get hit with Spike Growth every few meters they move, and Hadar will also hit them with Frost. Simply put, I loved using this combo. So by level 10, you are the ultimate jack of all trades and pretty good at some. You have the smites, you have, as a half orc, the crits are more deadly with your extra 2 attacks you'll have, so you can do tons of damage, and also you've got that high charisma, which just boosts basically everything you do and makes you better in conversations. You've got a ton of healing you can use, and your spells also are great for team combos and general support. And don't forget all the resources you have. You have your Warlock slots, they can replenish on a short rest. You've got some spell slots for level 1 and 2 from your Paladin. You've got your Oath charge, and you've got 4 Lay on Hands charges. And you can do 3 attacks per turn, which means 3 smites per turn if you really need to nuke down a boss. Max level. You will be starting Act 3 around level 10, and we will get our last 2 levels a decent time before the end game. So what do we take to finish off the Fey Knight build? Well, there are a few ways you can go about this. First is you take your Paladin up to level 7, so combined 12. That will give you Aura of Protection, which is great for the saving throws it will give to nearby allies and yourself. I had it on Shadowheart for this playthrough as she was a Paladin, and we barely ever failed concentration checks, which is very helpful for those AoE Warlock spells that require concentration, and for your hexes. Also at level 11 you get another spell slot at level 2, and the Aura of Warding that you get as the Oath of Ancients is also a great choice. If you have another Paladin with protection, you can take this one so that our team also takes half damage from spells, which is great for the very high damage spells you face in Act 3. Blight comes to mind. On the other hand, you can go up to level 7 with your Warlock. This will bump your Warlock spell level to 4, which will make every spell stronger, including smites, while you pick up the level 4 spell as well. But this isn't as important, as we have the AoEs that we want, and smite is the main use of our spell slots anyway. Why go blight when you can smite? As that blight will cut off any extra attack usage. Also, you get another invocation, but I'm of the belief that you only really need 3 invocations to get the essentials for a Warlock, as you already have your Eldritch Blast decked out, and the only really good ones left come at level 12 and 9 for the Warlock. At the same time, you get slightly less HP for those Warlock levels compared to the Paladin. There is a third option. Go 2 levels in Fighter for one simple reason: Action Surge. With this, your 3 attacks per turn from your Pact Blade plus your Paladin level 5 extra attack becomes 6 per turn. Add in a Potion of Speed or Haste from an ally, and that's 9 attacks per turn. You can effectively unload all of your Divine Smites on a boss in 1 turn. Also remember, Action Surge is a free action, not a bonus one, so you can hex a target for disadvantage and a bonus to damage, or use a non-divine smite as a primer, and then let those divine smites rip. I'm not going to show it as the bosses left to show this power are major spoilers for Act 3, but just imagine all of those smites. You can fit so many smites into this bad boy. Also, you're going to get another fighting style, which I went with Great Weapon, which again helps keep your damage high. So my pick would definitely be 2 levels into Fighter, which will bring you to max level. Hell, a 2 fighter dip is good for basically any class. I suggest Barbarian, which if you want you can find my video about it, I'll link it up there. Make sure to check it out, and also the full release addendum if you want to watch it. That build was originally an early access prediction, which turned out to be mostly true. Anyway, you're at max level now, you have a ton of flexibility, you're tanky, you can hit hard, you've got all that healing still, you can do up to 9 attacks in a turn, and even more importantly, you're really good for synergizing with either a warlock in your team or a paladin. Equipment. Not much to say here, just make sure you go with good heavy armor. I mean, you can always go for light armor if you're focusing on your dex if you prefer. That said, I don't suggest it if you're going Pact of the Blade because you want to focus on your charisma instead. And heavy armor just saves you the bother of thinking too much about your AC. If you do get Pact of the Blade, remember to get the Pact-bound hammer from Damon in Act 2. I didn't go with Blade first for my character as I was testing out the Pact of the Chain, but I did use it with Will, and seriously, I had Will using this well into Act 3 because it's a brilliant weapon for a warlock, Pact of the Blade, meaning I had to put little investment into his build. So feel free to grab that Pact-bound weapon, it is very good. That said, any equipment bonus to your Paladin Smites or Oath Channel are great. Again, anything that affects Warlock abilities is good. That said, for the record, I use Selûnite Heavy Plate for most of my playthrough. It's from the Extra Gear mod, and yes, it is a little bit overpowered for early levels. Even at a lowish gold cost, relatively speaking, I would suggest if you use that mod, I mean the armor looks fantastic, that's why I used it for the Fey Knight, you'll see it in all the footage. Do hold off getting it until at least late Act 2 or 3, when it's sort of more in line with the armors you get at that point. Because there's nothing like having 20 AC 5 hours into the game when not playing a monk or barbarian. Paladin plus Warlock with Blade Pact can make any weapon work, but also armor, just remember if you do go dex you want to keep to light or medium. You may even want to just keep to heavy if you're going for the strength build at first, but obviously once you get Pact of the Blade you're going to want to switch that over to your charisma for a respec. Again, I went with strength early on for simplicity, and then later on I switched over to full charisma. Combat and tactics. On the actual tactics and the way to use the Fey Knight in combat, the key is that you're synergizing elements of both classes for maximum effect. Even early on you'll see the benefit of this, as the first combo you will utilize is using the Hex as a bonus action, and giving the enemy disadvantage against saving throws depending on the smite you will choose to follow up with the next turn, as well as the little bit of extra necrotic damage you get on hit. So what you might do is Hex Constitution and follow up with Searing Smite. And remember that your non-divine smites can proc divine smite on a crit as well. The key with the paladin doing this is to use the hex to make sure that your non-divine smite apply their extra effect or stasis effect, that is preventing the enemy from resisting it with a saving throw. Remember, Hex is a bonus action that can be reapplied for free, so you don't have to spend more than one Warlock slot to get as many Hexes as you need to deal with as many enemies as you can bring down. And your Divine Smite is a normal action. But again, remember, the non-Divine Smites do use your bonus action, so be aware. This is a reason to bring another character with Hex. Once you get an extra attack, this gets even better as you start to multiply up the value of your smites. Because remember, smites only use slots when they hit, so if you miss on your extra attacks, that's fine. It just means you have more attempts for your smite. If you're hurting for spell slots, make sure to get Will or any Warlock to use their hexes to mark targets, as I did through my playthrough of this build. Again, that also means you can keep your bonus action if you want to use your non-divine smites, as I like to use them as an opener and then use my extra attacks for divine smite. And if you have another paladin in your team, as I did with Shadowheart this time round, just watch those radiant numbers flow. And if you did decide to go with the Raven Familiar from the Pact of the Chain as opposed to the Pact of the Blade, remember you can then blind 2 enemies in a turn eventually, which will allow you to have advantage on strikes, amplifying the carnage. Or better yet, have an ally with Familiar, as I did with Jaheira. But remember, there's also a feat to allow you to have a Familiar. Point is, you hex the target, you blind the target, and then you smite the target. Following the Hex Smite combo, remember by the mid game you should also have Hunger of Hader, that is the Hader plant growth combo for crowd control. And if you pick Counterspell and Hellish Rebuke along with your lucky die, you have so many reaction opportunities you can use. But remember, you don't get many spell slots through your Warlock, even though they do replenish, so careful usage of your slots is important for this build. Hence, maintaining hex concentration is important if you want to reapply your hexes for free. Another point is that, remember, you get Eldritch Blast. It's perhaps the best cantrip in the game, and it scales with your charisma via an invocation you can take, but also it scales with your combined level, allowing for more beams to be shot at once, hitting up to 3 targets at once. Just to note, I did not take the invocation at first, as it would be clearly optimal to do so, so be aware in the footage. I didn't take it before level 5 of my Warlock. Nevertheless, you have a good long range cantrip that will save you on spell slots early on and still be good in the late game. So the idea is you try to do your combos that you have, either for single targets or for area of effects, and use your cantrip in the case of the crowd control because you don't want to get close to the enemies, but also remembering that you can use your healing radiance if you have a bonus action to make sure that you and your teams stay topped up. That is, the tactic is you stay close together, you have your paladins with their aura, and you have a whole lot of smites to use if enemies get too close. All in all, it makes for a very powerful but also quite tactical build. Conclusion. And there you have it, the Fey Knight. Quite a versatile build. I hope you enjoyed my take on the old Lockadin build. Make sure to give me your thoughts on it, especially if there's any interesting changes you would have me make. I would love to hear your thoughts. And remember, the question of the day is, which is your favourite base Baldurs Gate 3 class and why? Feel free to mention multi-class considerations as well. I do look forward to your comments. I'll give my thoughts in the next section. Otherwise, make sure to subscribe if you liked the video. Please stay safe, have a great day, and thanks for watching. Question of the day. So which is my favourite Baldurs Gate 3 base class and why? Well, it should be clear from the allocation of build videos I've done so far that it is the Paladin. I do love a good Paladin multi-class after all. Whether it's Sorkadins, Lockadins, Fighterdins, is that a thing? Paladins without the lawful restriction of ages past are great. It's why Pathfinder Pallies make me sad. I'm forced to do lawful. Hell, with Baldur's Gate it lets you also switch to the Oathbreaker, which is a great addition. Overall, they're a great hybrid class that can have a ton of options. It can be a beat stick, it can be a healer, it can support, you name it, it can do it. Now I just need to round out my charisma multi-class builds with a Bardin or Baradin, I'm not sure what you'd call it, and I'm set. Hell, maybe I'll even play another class if I'm feeling original. Anyway, I shall also give an honorary mention to the Sorcerer and Warlock classes because they're great, and also I do like throwing goblins as a Berserker Barbarian as well. That said, make sure to let me know what your favourite class is and why. I would love to hear your thoughts, and thanks again for sticking around to the end here. I do appreciate it, and do please have a great day.